human processes, said, all right, this stuff is new, important, whatever. 50% of that was deemed novel and actionable by our people at the Electoral Commission or at the Police Coordination Center or at the International Observer Mission. Now, this 50% came from our friends at Meltwater, who could have been easily much lower. That, again, it's just an empirical outcome, a result from what we learned in Ghana. After Ghana, we then went to Kenya. Kenya was a much more complicated coordination. We had traditional media. We got people like Prof really able to make things happen. In Kenya, we had no cooperation from the government whatsoever. Without cooperation from the Independent Electoral Commission or the security coordination units or whatever, it was very hard for us to do anything with information that we discovered. We may find that a polling place was having a brawl in a queue. We did find people were having fistfights in a queue at a polling place. But we had no capacity to respond because nobody would take that information from us. So one thing that the Kenya example reveals is how this information, in the absence of coordination and cooperation from the relevant stakeholders in this particular place, often the government, means that it's information that doesn't allow for any response or action. And finally, let me see how we're doing time-wise. Not that. Let me tell you what we're doing now in Nigeria. Again, we just did the Ekiti state election, monitored the Ekiti state election. I guess that was last week. Does anyone know Ekiti state in Nigeria? Yeah, one or two of you. It's a student of mine who traveled with us last week to Ekiti State said it's like the Tennessee of Nigeria. So if anyone knows Tennessee in the United States, you know, I would not tell that to somebody who doesn't Ekiti because I think it's probably not considered a great compliment. I also probably wouldn't say it to anyone who lives in Tennessee for that matter. It's a small little state. It's a newish state, maybe 15 years old. And if Lagos is here, then it's like you're a little north, a little east. They had a state election. It actually was a landslide for the ruling PDP party. So it was a very an election of great national import, as it turned out, even though it was just this little Tennessee-style state in the middle of the country. But we used it as a pilot environment for a brand new set of systems that I'm going to describe. So we have a new set of technologies that are populated onto their handsets, assuming they have at least a feature phone, if not a smartphone. And then those questionnaires will be answered by the field observers who are trained to do so, right? So in the case of election observation, the questionnaire will generally start with things like, what time did the polling place open? Are there electoral observers from the parties there? Is there a security presence? Has everyone who wanted to be registered to vote on that day been registered? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a questionnaire that would be appropriate to whatever the electoral context is. The ELMO system supports these kinds of field observations from multiple field observers who have been trained, and then aggregates all those field observer data in real time into sort of a similar kind of platform or dashboard to the Aggie system. So it allows you to look for trends, it populates maps, you know, the kind of thing that you can imagine we do with Aggie as well. So the thing that we did for the first time ever in this pilot in Ekiti, and as far as we know, the first time ever done, ever, is that we developed a system. Here's just a photo of myself along with 3 of my students. Amanda, who is the PhD student you already saw, she was in the Ghana Tracking Center at the Kofi Annan Center. And then Tulika and Paul. Paul's from Nigeria itself, and then Tulika is a master's student who comes to us from India. What we did, again for the first time, is we in real time not only aggregated the social media platforms in Aggie, but we aggregated the formal observer information at exactly the same time. So that the team in a kitty, kind of the complementary team to what I described was here in Accra, the Kofi Annan Center, would be able to use not just social media, but formal, trained, and trusted observer data, all brought together and all visualized and analyzed in real time. So it seemed like a powerful model, but maybe it would be, maybe it wouldn't be. Let's see what actually happened. Now, Kitty is a small state, and this was a little gubernatorial election with very low voter turnout, right? So we're not talking about a very large state, and it's not a very high turnout election. We still got about 100,000 reports over the one day of the election. 100 of them were escalated to these things we're calling incidents. You'll remember there was about 375 in the case of Donna that had that escalation. So we had 100 things escalated. Elmo, the formal observer data, complemented Aggie social media vice versa in this way. Of the 100 incidents, about 60 of them were verified. In other words, ground truth. And half of those were shown to be false and half of them to be true. If we think about just, say, the 30 that were basically verified and shown to be true, about half of those were formal observers raising an issue that we then triangulated or verified via social media. And half of them were the reverse. Social media raising an issue that we then triangulated or verified via our formal observers and the Elmo technology platform. In other words, we found fairly symmetric complementarity between the value and power of formal observers and the value and power of social media. And they were not just echoing each other, they were actually raising orthogonal or different issues. The formal observers also can be free. And here what we did was built a platform that integrated both of these. In the case of our formal observers, we had about 170 observers, one in each of the sort of polling wards, which is the way in which they organize their polling units, along with social media. 100,000 reports. Of course, how many came for the purpose of elections, perhaps more generally, formal observer data coming in real time and being aggregated and integrated in a single platform with social media. So now I'm kind of on the concluding slides. So the argument I'm making, and this is, I think, empirically maintained, is that social media for monitoring for elections is working, and we collectively, including Chemicals Bites and Meltwater and the really groundbreaking work that occurred in the Ghanaian election, really have led the way, and we're learning a lot with every additional election. And now we've brought in a powerful additional piece to this puzzle, which is social media being complemented with formal observer data. What's next? So I kind of foreshadowed that that initial Aggie aggregator platform was really just that, just kind of an initial system. We've now rebuilt the entire system from the ground up using what we believe to be fairly state-of-the-art systems, Node.js, Mongo. A lot of this came out of focus groups that we did during the Ghana elections with the Meltwater people who had used the system. We got all sorts of feedback. So here is some design work for the aggregators display. It may seem a little, it has a lot of sophistication, but we believe that this new design is really, really far superior than the old one. Here's another screenshot, in this case of the incident screen. And so as we finish this system, we have it in what we call alpha test. During the kitty election, we'll beta test it another month or two, and we'll do an initial field deployment in the February 2015 Nigerian national election. This will be something that anybody, including I hope some of you, can get a hold of and use. It's trivial system architecture, but just to back to our Elmo server, we have been using Frontline SMS for those of you who know that. If you're wondering what is running on the Android handsets, we're using ODK Collect. If we have a Java app, it's called Computer. We may deprecate this. I'm not sure we're going to keep the Java app going. We have a trust model on API. It's a API means application program interface. That's how anyone can gain access to the data streams that we're collecting. And we have a trust model, a security model, which would allow individual technological platform. You could then allow all comers real-time access to all your data, social media or formal observer, or you can say, I only want this data to have real-time access, other data you'll publish in other temporal intervals and so on. So finally, some of the takeaways. One thing I think we found is it's critical in these elections across 5 or more elections, and actually there's been more on the order of 8 deployments of the system now. It's critical to meet the electorate where they are, and that's one of the powers of social media. It's really saying whatever you want to use, you can use. Wherever you're comfortable, we can come to you, as opposed to demanding some particular system or interface. That includes technological neutrality. So as I said, Nigeria people were tweeting API, or we can scrape it, we can come to it and sort of remove the data. We don't care. We can come to the users. We also sort of feel like it's been critical to have embeds, because if you want a system that's real-time actionable, the way we're able to, in practice, realize that is because we have people at the Electoral Commission, or at the Police Coordination Center, or at the International Observer Coordination Center. Now, there are ways in which you could imagine the system to be of value without in needing real-time response, right? Maybe you just want to do post-hoc analysis and decide whether an election was free or fair, or decide whether a politician is keeping his word on promises before and after the election, or whatever it is. That then clearly would not require embeds. But if you're looking for real-time response, which is what we were focusing on, what the system is really designed for in many ways, it's designed for high volume and real-time response. If you're interested in that, then the embeds are critical. We found from the Kitty pilot test that formal observers complement social media and vice versa. And finally, what I'm really interested in next steps, once we get Aggie 2.0 perfected, is to think deeply about these systems beyond elections. Going back again to Tom's initial comment, which is that elections are fine, but democracy is a much bigger thing than elections. And so I'm, in terms of my research and my lab's work, ultimately really interested in how this kind of system can work in broader issues of political development and social engagement. How we can go back to those Facebook generations in Nigeria or Ghana and say, these tools can be put in the hands of people across West Africa and enable people to engage the political process. So, plenty of folks to acknowledge. In Nigeria, our major partners are the Ottawa Foundation, Enough is Enough, and the Digital Bridge Institute. Of course, here in Ghana, our main partner is Chemical Spice, and Meltwater also was very helpful, but again, Chemical Spice, the main partner. In Liberia, it's the ILAB, in Kenya, it's the IO, and our donors, of course, we have to acknowledge. For Ghana, as Tony mentioned, DFID was the main donor across these other contexts and more generally. So, thank you, and some questions.
Can we clap for thinking of integrating with the actual formal observer missions, or when you can train your own formal observers to work with?
Oh, well, I should have acknowledged these folks. First of all, we built Elmo for the Carter Center, training UN missions, but we're ones that might even surprise you. So the one we're working with most closely right now is UNICEF. UNICEF is actually very focused on children voting. And so they're interested in using Elmo to try to establish during elections the level of child So there's a UN agency that we're working directly with. Now, the possibility for the system, I think, to move beyond and to grow in interest is we'll just see, right? But clearly, international observer groups are already behind it, and then we'll see where else it takes off.
Such a software for elections, and are you thinking of making use of it come 2016? Are you going to apply it?
Yeah, the government of Ghana is doing part. We work with the Electoral Commission. The Ghana Police Service, which sub-governments are aware of the project.
And what about 2016?
Yes, and we are planning towards first. There's going to be a local elections and also a referendum if it happens. And if we might find the money, we hope to deploy it and also in the general elections.
I mean, from my vantage, if there's any way that we can be of use, we would be delighted, of course. As I said, the Ghana election was the one that we learned the most from, I would say, the one we've done so far. And now that we have a whole new platform built from the bottom up with a design that reflects many of the comments we received during the Ghana election, plus this brand new integration with informal observers, and if the party center is here in 2016 or something like that, I mean, it would be sort of the grand, all possible things to all people project. So I hope.
Capturing voice and maybe translating the text, and then also working with different languages.
So, I'm going to repeat.
Asking was what capacity does this platform have for using voice and then also language? If you take Ghana, yeah.
It's an excellent question. Often people have brought forward the interest in still or video images. Those, as I'm sure you know, and as well audio, are very complicated media types. And given that we have these essentially rules in terms of the system performance, that it can work with 100 reports a second. And at this point, actually, we're testing up to 1,000 reports a second. So the basic interest in this system is that it's real-time with high volume. There are other systems that would be good for non-real-time or low volume, but this one is really focused on real-time, high volume. That, along with how unpleasant these other media types are computationally, it would be wonderful. It's a huge research question. I think the most realistic would be still imagery, but it's no time soon, at least if it's just my little lab and collaborators such as good people here in Ghana, because it's probably beyond our initial capacity, but it would be very important. Now, when you talk about language, almost all of the system is language neutral. So in many of these cases, we were receiving non-standard English. So what some people would call pidgin English or whatever. And it didn't matter. The system worked fine with that. In some cases, we would, in Nigeria, some people were using Igbo or Hausa or Hira or Khan or whatever. I don't remember a lot of it, but there's nothing about the system that even knows it's English versus God. It just wouldn't even care. So if you wanted to tweet in God, you could tweet in God, and as long as somebody could read the God, don't ask me, it will just work. As you know, no doubt, social media is pretty English focused in Anglophone West African countries, though often the pidgin Englishes or the localized English, however you want to use that callback. And so the system just reflects that reality of folks that are tweeting in that. Or they're also doing a lot of code switching, so you might see language mix-ups, so some English and then some other language, all in one tweeting.
With your background to know what's your own appraisal of Africa's readiness to embrace ICT in general, first in general, and then how far these two you've developed in monitoring elections have gone down with the local people. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. It's pretty low. Internet, broadband is almost non-existent. I mean, you all understand the Liberian context very well, so that will come as no surprise. And yet, we received 200,000 reports, and we were able to actually do what we found to be a robust job monitoring that election. Now, it turned out that the Liberian election was extraordinarily boring in a very big way. Like, nothing happened. The biggest thing that happened was like some people were campaigning too close to a polling place or something like that. And I should add, there was one or two people died the day before the election, et cetera, so it's not completely rosy, but the day of the election, it was just, nothing to do. So how is it that Liberia, with almost no readiness, can have a fairly rich social media space around the election? And part of it is because there's all this bridge activity. It's amazing how people are on social media while they're off social media. It's somebody's mother phones their son or daughter and says, "Can you believe blah, blah, blah?" And that person tweets, and then it goes, there's all these people who serve kind of social media bridge purposes across a community, really online in any meaningful way. There is a force multiplying effect of that 8% because they act as bridges for another 30%. So that said, you sort of asked, what do I think about kind of the overall readiness of the continent? I think that's sort of how you were framing it. That's a very fact-specific question. It varies considerably from place to place, country to country, urban, rural, and whatnot. The one thing I would say is it's amazing the progress, because I've been working in this space on this continent, or even in Ghana itself, for 15 years, and there's just no comparison. The mobile phone explosion has meant a lot in that regard. The beginning of especially what we would call facility-based competition on the submarine fiber cables. In other words, now that there are more submarine fiber cables, means that at least the international gateway capacity is both enhanced, but also due to competition, you're realizing the benefits of it. You may all know that the initial fiber connectivity that came through Ghana was basically priced, three pesos below the satellite connectivity because of the sort of abusive, monopolistic regulation of it, and now you have much richer international gateway. The biggest issue that probably needs to be attended to ensure that capacity is brought further and further throughout, say, Ghana, not just the urban areas, but into peri-urban and rural parts of Ghana, is to attend to the distribution network, the fiber broadband network that connects across the country. And there's been a lot of initiatives, even going back a decade ago, when the high tension power cables were put around from Kumasi to Cape Town, Cape Coast, Accra, etc., street fiber, that kind of network, those infrastructures really need attention. Of great things happening and plenty of opportunity still. And that's just on the demand side. I didn't even talk on the supply side, which is more important. But
more correction that audio is more of a domestic observable, not international.
Oh, yes.
That's all. We know. I have two questions, but this is the context. First, I want to get your response to the connection between social media tracking African elections and the question of speed. There is a sense of very careful, meticulous way of checking observers' report before you certify yourself that you're correct and you want to share this. Social media thrives on speed. I had a particular challenge in 2012 when my observers wanted me to put things on Facebook, but I said I needed to double sure. And therefore, by the time I was ready, it was a bit late. What has been your experience with the latest example that you cited with equity? And to what degree that the levels of verification, whether from non-observers reporting and from observers coming, what has been your experience in terms of speed and in that context trying to achieve what we want to use ICT to do, but at the same time being sure that we don't send out material that will end up harming us?
Thank you for that question. If it was something that was a real issue. Otherwise, it was stuff. Well, they would do things like polling place open, so that was fixed to a time. Polling place closed. They're doing the county tabulation now. You know, that kind of stuff. Otherwise, they wouldn't send anything unless it was, wow, this is happening now. So, intuitively, you would think that would be about as fast as it could be. But then social media are tweeting, oh, this is happening now too, often at the exact time that it's happening. So, but I just don't know because we haven't done we haven't studied that question, though it's an important one, and I think we should definitely study it. One thing that I do want to say, which kind of goes to your, well, as formal observers, we're very cautious. We don't put things out until we really think it's true, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's critical, and the formal observers are doing something very different than what we're doing. We make use of formal observer data, but we're not formal observers, right? So we're not, trying to do the partisan puts nothing out until the day after, and what they put out is a preliminary thing that says, was it fair or fair? If they see something like a polling place that hasn't opened, they don't do anything except for note it, right? And then it goes into the study. They don't respond. This model is about response, but it puts nothing out there. There is nothing in this system that goes out anywhere. It's separate to our MHEDs and our trained and trusted team. We never tweeted things. We tweeted back to individuals, right? We said, did this happen? We contacted individuals. We never put anything on social media. So there's nothing that we're putting out there. We're just sucking everything up and trying to make an internal decision. So if we say, we don't know if it's true that this polling place is closed or open, it's not that we then put that in Facebook and we're like, hey, it could be closed. We then go to the Electoral Commission and we're like, we hear it's possible that this polling place is not open, which is obviously a very different thing than going public. And a polling place not open would be one thing, but can you imagine if we're talking about mob violence somewhere? We don't go public and say, there's mob violence in the Volta region. What we would do is go to our trained security or police force partners and say, social media is reporting and we've tested it and it could be true. There might be mob violence at this polling place in the Volta region. Your professionals need to attend. Very different than, so we don't put anything else. And that's a critical thing to notice. We're not generating any data on social media. We're using that data to mobilize these trained groups.
Okay, on that note, I want to bring the wonderful presentation to an end. Again, we want to thank Prof for giving this very insightful presentation. Tomorrow is a holiday, so we want to start the holiday early with a cocktail, so I want to invite us to join us for some drinks and some finger. So thank you very much.